Inbuilt in our minds is a primitive chimp, an impulsive and instinctual system residing in the orbital cortex part of our brains, consisting of various drives and instincts that are often low self-esteem in nature. This link to low self-esteem can be traced back to when we were primates, when surviving the next day was never guaranteed and being outcast by your community meant starvation. In this cutthroat environment, we had to think fast, prioritise short-term fixes and gravitate to solutions that will give us more security, preferring pleasure in the moment over suffering. We would also be on the lookout for escape routes to avoid suffering, as experiencing pain would trigger our flight mode, as the threat of starvation would cause an emotional and irrational response, failing to grasp the possibility that short-term pain may lead to long-term gain. Fast forward a few million years and we still have this fight or flight mode, although fortunately we have more time to think through our decisions and utilise our rational faculties. However, the consequences for this shift to rationality is that we neglect this darker, primitive side of our psyches. We lock it in the cage and throw away the key. When this part of ourselves does reveal itself, it often catches us by surprise, rearing its ugly face during a heated moment, whether it's during a competition or in a survival setting. After the fact, you may be ashamed and apologise, saying, "Sorry, I got carried away, I don't know what came over me," as if it is an external force that momentarily possessed you. If you're constantly hijacked by this chimp side of your personality and feel ashamed when it takes over, this is a sign that there's an inner power struggle between the chimp and your rational side, and you need to bridge the divide by letting it in, trying to understand it instead of locking it away. If you want more videos like this, subscribe or leave a comment. It really helps the channel grow and it's good to see some engagement. Thanks. Accepting your dual nature is the first step. Before you can hope to quash these impulsive outbursts that occur, whether it's in public or during a heated game of Monopoly with your family, you must first accept that it's part of you and learn to live with it. You should learn about your own inner chimp in order to tame its volatile emotions and keep it happy. If ignored, it will get restless and hijack your mind. Imagine that your chimp currently lives in a cage, neglected and desperate for control. Before it's too late and tries to hijack you, you need to reward it as if it's a pet with fundamental needs. As the psychologist Maslow demonstrated with his hierarchy of needs, safety, health, and security, i.e. food and shelter, are the two foundational needs at the bottom of the hierarchy that need to be met before we can move on to the higher levels. Similarly, we can look at our chimp as the lower level that needs to stay happy and feel secure to keep our feelings of low self-esteem at bay. If we neglect this foundational level, we will not be able to reach the top hierarchy of self-actualization, which is becoming the best version of ourselves, one which understands the needs of both the chimp and the rational human. Expanding on the cage analogy, the parameters of the cage itself can grow in proportion to the courage that the chimp feels that it has. If the chimp is ignored, it will remain in this cramped, limited environment until eventually lashes out and starts shaking the cage in madness because it wants to be let out. This is why it's unwise to deprive yourself of all pleasure, as without any reward, you're enslaving your chimp side. With our chimp side being tied to low self-esteem, all it wants is acknowledgement and reassurance and the occasional reward. It is our responsibility to expand its cage so that it doesn't feel the walls of its enclosure. It's not as equipped as the rational side to offer solutions, but instead can illuminate the darkness so that we can decipher its contents and expand our surroundings. A parallel can be made here with Plato's Allegory of the cave, in which prisoners are chained inside a cave and they're only able to perceive the shadows of figures on the wall. If this is all that they see, they'll believe that these shadows are the only reality. Think of this as the chimp's experience prior to our intervention. Now, Plato asks us to imagine that one of the prisoners breaks free and follows the light to the opening of the cave, discovering that there is an outside world more real than the shadows on the wall. This is us beginning the journey towards enlightenment. However, first we must go back and bring our chimp with us to light our path. This is easier said than done, as the chimp's reality are the shadows on the wall, and so we must be delicate with its needs of safety and security and dispel the illusions that the walls are all that exist. This means we must move away from a life of conformity and practice courageous acts so as to encourage the chimp towards exploration. Imagine that the chimp is on our backs and we're carrying him through an unexplored terrain to a new world. This can be compared to the legend of Saint Christopher, who, according to the myth, was a giant man who carried Christ across the treacherous river. Despite Christ weighing more than the average traveller that Christopher would usually take on his back, he was resilient and got him across the river unharmed. Expanding on the link with this myth and the chimp's cage further, we can view the child of Christ as our own inner childlike spirit, one that motivates our rational side to explore and protect our inner potential, leading the child through the untrodden path. How to know when you've confined yourself in your chimp's cage. If you're unsure whether you're in this cage where your potential is stunted and are oblivious to your depressive feelings, pay attention to the language that you use in your day-to-day life. A recent study published in Clinical Psychological Science found that people who use more first-person singular pronouns, such as me, myself and I, rather than third-person pronouns, is an indicator that they have symptoms of depression. This pattern of pronoun use suggests people with depression are more focused on themselves and less connected with others. Of course, this isn't necessarily a surprising discovery because when you're in the midst of pain, your focus is limited and you tend to retreat to your familiar comforts. The study also compared 64 mental health forums with 19 non-mental health forums and found that the use of absolutist words such as always, nothing, or completely was approximately 50% higher in anxiety and depression forums and approximately 80% higher in suicidal ideation forums than compared to the other forums. Therefore, those with depression will likely have more of a black and white view of the world, with this absolutism being used as a coping mechanism which manifests in their style of language and keeps them stuck in their cage of false security. What if I don't know I'm in the cage? If you're still unsure whether you're in a cage, another useful exercise would be to imagine yourself on your deathbed. Although this is a morbid exercise, this could make you realise that the restrictions you have actively made for yourself are all smoke and mirrors, an illusion you have put up to keep you boxed in. Just like Plato's cave analogy, you may have been staring at the walls for so long that you have convinced yourself that they're the only reality. What if I know I'm trapped? If you're aware that you're paralysed in your cage and want to expand your parameters, that's a good sign that you're aware of your situation and are receptive to progress. Closing thoughts. In conclusion, we should never be ashamed of our chimp side. It's our responsibility to be patient with it and embrace, encourage, and reassure its low self-esteem tendencies. With the chimp being tied to our instinctual system, we can learn a lot from it. It can teach us to let go of our preconceptions and be formless. With this side integrated, we can be a clean slate in every encounter, allowing us to be adaptable and less stuck in our rationality, which may be built on a misconception. It reminds us to sink into the journey, not solely fixated on a long-term destination. In the same breath, we must also engage with the chimp's curiosity and learn to be courageous, guiding our chimp through treacherous obstacles using our rational system to see the bigger picture. Thanks for watching.